Hey guys, welcome to this Zoom call on recruiting. This is something that's new to us that we are very, very excited about. Sam's going to go over it. Sam's going to do most of the legwork on this one. But the world of college baseball and recruiting has changed dramatically over the last couple of years. With all the changes that have been implemented by the NCAA, it's become harder and harder for high school kids to get to that next level. High school kids are basically they're no longer competing just against high school kids. They are now competing with bigger and more physical college players. As we look, as we always do, and we analyze our systems year over year, we're always trying to figure out how can we build a more broader, bigger platform for our athletes and to give them the best chance for success. And it was a natural transition for us to spend the last, I don't know, 12, 13 years getting athletes bigger and stronger and faster. And just became a natural transgression for us to, hey, we're getting these kids up to this point. We might as well give them the next implement to help them see it through. So we thought recruiting was absolutely just a no-brainer. And Sam will talk about that, and my partner Baram will talk about that even before Sam. But before our involvement in the recruiting process with Sam, and Sam might be able to speak about this a little bit. A typical recruiting service could evaluate you as a player and discuss your potential and suggest a path. But recently, me and Baram got together with Sam, and we were like, you know what, we need to get Sam onboarded with a lot of systems at RPP that actually recruiting services aren't aware of. So it builds the power of what Sam can do with him blending. So Sam has been coming in. Sam has been onboarding with me about understanding how we assess athletes, about understanding how we test athletes, about our programs, about our periodization. He spent the last couple months with me in the office, learning about all these systems. And it's kudos to Sam, and it goes a long way to show how dedicated he is to actually making this something better. So now with Sam and RPP in tow together, he can not only help guys identify the right path, but he can also assemble a development program which can put you on a better path. Instead of just tell you, hey, we might not be the right fit, or you need to do this, you need to do that. He can actually program a plan for you to help you get to that next level. And we think this is a game changer for athletes looking to play at the next level. Player development is now a big part of the process, and there's no place that I know of within 500 miles of us that works on player development like we do. And with the implementation of Sam Sharf, doing with RPP recruiting, we just feel like it's a can't miss recipe. And I'm gonna really turn it over to Bahram right now, because Bahram can speak much more about the power and the guy Sam that's sitting right here that's going to speak to you, because Bahram was involved personally with Sam with his own kids. So go ahead, Bahram, take it over.
Yeah, thanks, Nance. We didn't make this decision lightly, bringing Sam on board and having him join us. Being in the recruiting business, it's a personal process. It really is, much more so than player development, much more so than travel teams. Deciding and getting someone to help you about where you go to college and what's the right fit and all. These are personal decisions. And I've just been lucky. I've known Sam for 14 years. My son is 28, almost 28 now, and I think he was a freshman or an eighth grader when we decided to hire Sam at Time to Sign to help him with his process. So I've known this guy for a long time, and when the opportunity came up to bring him on board, I mean, it was really a slam dunk. I think Nuns and I had a 30-second conversation about whether we're going to do this or not, and it was easy. I mean, not only I've seen him from afar, I've seen him up close. He was very involved in helping my kid. And the one thing I'll tell you, which is really amazing about Sam, is the athletes just love this guy. The level of personal attention he gives them, and the way he connects with them, the way he speaks with them, the way he guides them really in this process. The kids and really the families, I've never heard anyone say negative about anything negative about this guy. Um, Past couple of days, we've been actually out reaching out to college coaches, telling them about this expansion on our behalf. And, once again, the feedback I'm hearing from college coaches, just amazing, really, really amazing. So we're lucky to have him. I'm going to let, Sam do all the talking. He's going to talk about the service and what we hope to bring everybody and go from there. On you, Sam.
Awesome. I appreciate the kind words and Nunzim Baram. And, likewise, obviously, as the conversation expanded, it
Yeah.
became, quite evident that this is where I wanted to be. And creating this platform for players was going to be really powerful and provide, a forum to create, the best pathway for guys finding their fit at the college level. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here with you guys real quick. This is working. Good. So, quick little background in terms of my experience here in the recruiting space. I was a student assistant at Penn State University in the Big Ten at the Division I level for 4 years. That was my introductory to college baseball, everything that it entails. Was very fortunate to, have a front row seat in recruiting meetings, on campus visits, get out and evaluate players at some of the camps and showcases that take place during the recruiting calendar. And those were valuable touch points that I still rely upon today. On the professional side, going back now almost 14 years, I've been at a few different companies along the way and have helped hundreds of families through the recruiting process. I've done travel baseball, camp showcases, things on the facility side. So once again, I've garnered a lot of experience and touch points in the amateur baseball space, and have been able to use that now exclusively as an advisor for the last five or so years. Really the power now of working with RPP recruiting is having a all in-house component where we can really take a holistic player management approach to every client that we work with.
Excuse me, Sam, 1 second. People are asking if they can record this. We are recording this. So if I hit deny, it's only because it will be available at a later date. So we are recording this. So no, I can't allow it to be recorded right now, but we will send it out and it can be attained if need be. Sorry, go ahead, Sam.
Awesome. So I'm going to jump into, the topics for this evening. Along the way, if you have some questions, feel free to unmute yourself and interject. If you think it's topical to what we're discussing. I left plenty of time at the end as well, though, where we can, have a Q&A. So if you want to write something down, we'll be sure to address it before we wrap up this evening. I think in order to really understand college baseball recruiting, you have to understand the landscape at the NCAA level. Within the last 3 years post-COVID, there has been substantial change, right? You see it probably on ESPN or other media forums, most closely related to, football and basketball. But similar to those other sports, baseball has seen a drastic shift. Most notably, I think here and we finally have some clarity within the last several months is how Division I rosters are going to be limited here going forward. So inside of the current system, a fully funded Division I program, all right, has 40 roster spots. So when the season begins, which has just started, opening weekend was this past Friday, you're allowed to have 40 active players. All right, during the fall, during the January period leading up to opening day, there was no limit. So you could show up on campus September 1. There could be 60 plus players in fall camp throughout the duration of that semester. Usually a cut down around Thanksgiving, maybe a few more guys left to cut as a lead up to opening day. And now that the season has begun, 40 active players. Going forward, there's now going to be a 38-man cap to start the fall. All right, so there's now a fall cap in place. And then as of December 1st, so basically, towards the end of the fall semester, that program will have to declare their 34-man roster. So we've seen a reduction in roster size of 6 players, and then obviously substantial cuts in terms of the fall period and how many guys can partake during that time frame. This is causing, into the future, a drastic movement of talent. Right. I think when you now see Division II, Division III, junior college, different areas of the country where NAIA is available to you in a popular destination for high school players, the talent pool is going to be flooded with guys. All right. As a high school player, right, the reduction of roster spots means that there's less opportunity for you at the Division I level. You now combine that with the transfer portal, all right, and other sources of procuring talent, further complicate the issue for high school players. All right, we're going to get to that in a second. So, understanding the significance of the roster cap at the Division I level is imperative to really see the effect on the entirety of the sport right now. And even as a high school player, as a junior, a sophomore right now, what that does to your outlook into your college years as a prospect. From a scholarship perspective, there's also been a lot of changes within the last handful of years. A lot more scholarship opportunity at the Division I level, which is really exciting and much needed. Our sport has seen tremendous growth in the last decade. You look at the TV revenue, things like the ACC, the SEC network, certainly the College World Series contract with ESPN. The ratings for our sport have ballooned, which is tremendous to see, and really exciting. As a result of that, there's definitely more money in the sport. You look at coaching salaries, right? We now have 7-figure head coaches at the top of the Division I landscape, all right, and players, have also benefited now. So, at right now, currently at the Division I level, there's 11.7 scholarships. It's a complicated math equation in terms of how they came up with that back in the day, but that is what a fully funded Division I program has. All right, so across their 40-man roster, they have 11.7 scholarships for the entirety of that group of players. Going forward, the scholarship pool has been expanded to 34 to match the new roster cap. So basically 1 scholarship for every player on the roster. But you need to keep in mind that a very, very small percentage of programs will get to that full allotment. All right. While the game is succeeding, financially, mid-major, small conference Division I schools are not there from an athletic department standpoint to support that expansion of scholarships. So a lot of programs are going to still operate where they currently are. All right. You need to keep in mind as well that not every Division I program is fully funded. So not everybody is operating at 11.7 currently. There are Division I programs that operate with as few as 4 to 5 scholarships. So they're not going to go plus 30 in the coming years. I would say most mid-major programs will be somewhere in the mid-teens over the upcoming seasons. So from a financial standpoint, it's not football, it's not basketball. I don't want to start this off on a negative note, but you guys kind of all picked the wrong sport here in terms of finances and how it works from a scholarship perspective. Okay. Keep in mind that at the Division I level, certainly at the top of the sport, the SEC, parts of the ACC, the Big 12, name, image, and likeness, NIL, is starting to become more and more of a factor. Not so much in high school recruiting like you see in some of the bigger sports, football and basketball again, but it is a part of the landscape. All right, but something that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because it doesn't affect a lot of the high school recruiting to date. At the Division II level, all right, there's 9 scholarships. There's no minimum on those, so they can be divided up into as small of an allotment as the coach wants to make in order to try and, take that money as far as he can across his roster. Division III has no athletic aid, so there's no baseball scholarship money, but there is merit opportunity through your academic success, your transcript, your test scores, whatever those institutions value in terms of how they package their merit money to go out. It's part of the reason why grades are so important from a recruiting standpoint in terms of creating a reward system for yourself over the course of a 4-year college degree. There is no doubt that baseball, or athletics as a whole, but in this case, baseball can influence the merit opportunities that you get at those Division III schools. I've had players that I've been involved with that have gone on to play at that level, and over the course of a 4-year career, have earned in excess of 6 figures. All right, based on what was provided by them through the baseball program. All right, typically, by the time you're in August, maybe early September, well ahead of the admissions process with that particular school, you've already gotten a pre-read on your admission status and the financial package that's been presented to you. All right, so you have a pretty good idea in terms of the affordability, and again, that's all taking place through the lens of the recruiting process. Certainly, I think in my time, now 14 years into helping players through this recruiting process, the biggest change has been the transfer portal. All right, and the effect that it's had on roster procurement, high school players, really the entire landscape. Players have transferred forever, right? You can go back into the 80s, the 70s, throughout the history of collegiate athletics. Guys have moved institutions and played at different programs. What has really popularized the transfer portal is coming out of the COVID era. Players were now permitted to transfer and play immediately. The old rule was that when you went from a Division I institution to another Division I institution, you had to sit out what they called a year in residence. So 365 days on your new campus before you're eligible to compete in a game. With that rule being removed, you could now finish the season. We'll stick with some local schools at Seton Hall, right, at the end of mid-May, end of the conference tournament, let's say. You would jump in the transfer portal, in the early summer period, let's say, first week of June, pick a new institution, let's say St. John's, and you could show up on campus, September 1st at that new institution and play in a game, by mid-February. So the ability to recruit college players is certainly compelling for college coaches for many reasons, right? Number one, those guys are more mentally and physically mature. All right, they've been through at least 1 year of what it's like to be on a Division I campus and the time demand and the physical demand and everything that goes into that lifestyle. Typically, there's obviously a talent assessment, right, that they've made it to that level. If a player has already produced either at the Division I, II, or III, you now have college stats to consider, right, that are at least a little closer to the level of play that you're recruiting to versus high school and summer ball where the scale of play is varies greatly. So when you talk about trying to evaluate a guy in the transfer portal that has numbers, it's a pretty easy process for coaches. Right? I've been involved in those in the last couple of years, and you'll call up a recruiting coordinator and say, "Hey man, just want to reach out about player ABC," and he'll be like, "Hey, hold on one second." He pulls up Synergy, which is a system that they use, and he'll go in there and he has all their stats, and they're able to get advanced stats on, hey, what's his batting average or slugging percentage versus fastballs 90 plus miles an hour. All right, and then they're able to go click in on each one of those at bats and have video synced to those things. It's a really powerful tool. It's a really good way to get a sense of what you're recruiting versus trying to take the kid that, even in the most competitive high school league here in the Northeast did really well, but for the most part, didn't see the same equivalent of pitching. This again has caused, certainly a huge effect on high school recruits. All right. You then also have grad transfers, which fall into a similar bucket as transfer portal guys, and junior college, right, which has been around for a long time. Obviously, again, more physically mature guys with college experience. There's certainly, I don't know how closely you guys have followed the Vanderbilt quarterback in his case against the NCAA, where he was granted extra eligibility that his junior college years didn't count. As a result of that lawsuit, currently any junior college player at the NCAA level that has their eligibility expiring inside of this calendar year has been granted basically an expansion of their eligibility, that those junior college years don't count. It's a little premature that is going to say that that's going to continue forward as legislation. I think there's a lot of people who believe that it will. It's something that, obviously everybody's closely following because again, it'll have a huge impact on how coaches recruit, right? The ability to take a junior college kid who still has 4 years of eligibility, that's already played, 2 years at a higher level, be able to look at the stats, be able to diagnose the skill set a little bit more specifically is intriguing. All right. So that's something that definitely has some impact. It's not official yet. Again, it's something that we're all monitoring in the recruiting world. As a high school player, I think it's really important to understand timelines, right? And how that affects your recruitment and your development as well. So currently, as a high school player, you're not permitted to talk with a Division I school prior to August 1st of your junior year. All right, so inbound to your junior year. That has dramatically slowed down the recruiting process. You go back, 3-4 years ago, you used to see 8th graders, 9th graders, a few 7th graders making commitments to LSU, Texas A&M, University of Texas, USC, those, top 30 type programs in the country, big national programs. I think a lot of us thought that was a little silly, and that the rule change, was implemented a few years back now to start to slow down the recruiting process. I would say currently as a 2028, so a high school freshman, you really need to stay focused and locked in on your development. I've been fortunate to work with, some guys early in the process at that time period in their career who, were extremely talented. I would say in the quote unquote old system would be guys who committed, as high school freshmen. But even them, it was hard to pull coaches out to watch them play during, what would be the upcoming summer for the 2028 class as a result of this rule change. There's just not a lot of incentive for college coaches to go out and watch and evaluate guys that they can't communicate with, that they can't offer. So the recruiting process really in its earliest point at this time frame, outside of camps, all right, really begins in the summer leading up to August 1st of your junior year. And those are for the guys who are on an early track, have a chance to most likely commit during some point in that calendar year, whether, right after the summer period in August, early September, or maybe in the fall period as fall ball wraps up in early to mid-October. All right. The majority of high school players, all right, still commit during the summer between their junior and senior year. All right, so just keep that in mind in terms of where you are in your recruiting timeline. Certainly from a Division II and a Division III program perspective, they're recruiting year to year still. So, right now they're focused on 2026. They'll spend June really through October, November, garnering commitments from that rising senior class. With understanding of kind of, what you're up against, all right, in terms of the college baseball landscape, it's imperative to have a really good approach to how you're going to attack this thing. you need to really look at this from a holistic perspective. All right. Everybody wants to talk about the commitments. Everybody, most 16, 17-year-old guys, they see the graphics go up on Instagram, the likes, the comments, all the fanfare that comes along with that. But you need to build a strong foundation. And that really begins the day you show up in high school. You need to start to live a lifestyle that is going to match your habits and your goals. And that starts with the foundational elements that we always talk about in terms of skill development, strength, speed, and nutrition, and academic success. All right. Obviously, here at RPP, we're really excited about having an in-house component that can really handle the entirety of this base level. All right. Whether it's on the skill development side with pitching and hitting, right? Those obviously being focal points of the recruiting process from a skill perspective. Obviously from a strength, speed, all right, everything that comes along with our assessments in the weight room, having programs that are designed to attack players' weaknesses and produce at a high rate. And then, certainly from an academic standpoint, not that we're going to get in there and, tutor you in chemistry. I don't think anybody would want that. But, obviously coming along with an understanding of how course selection, right? If you're an academic kid and AP classes, test timeframes in terms of when you should be taking the ACT or the SAT, all of these things really add up to having a sound foundation as you move forward in the recruiting process. And as that comes together and you've built, a player that can now be recruited, all right, and everybody's going to have to make individual choices of when that is, all right, you can now start to layer in how to go about finding that fit. Right. And that's obviously where, my experience and knowledge comes in terms of player marketing. And we'll get more into this, all right, in terms of emails and videos and camps and showcases and how those all fit into putting yourself out there in front of schools and getting the exposure needed to move the process along, get interest, and hopefully have that culminate in offers. All right. In terms of where to start, I think, it's imperative to have a really strong player evaluation, all right, to have a full spectrum of where your game currently stands, both compared to your peer group and then how that's going to evolve within the recruiting process. Whether that's your high school coach, your travel ball coach, family friend, you need somebody who's going to be objective and candid with you in order to put the best plan together. I'm obviously inherently biased, but I think that's one of the best assets of what we do here at RPP, and the combination again of what I've done over the last 14 years, now paired with our movement, strength, and power assessments, and getting a complete understanding of how guys' bodies move, right? From mobility and stability to strength in the weight room to power output using incredible technology like force plates and Proteus. These are things that the average player doesn't have access to. So as an advisor, to have that wealth of information from day one to really build that holistic plan that we talked about, information is power, right? And as a player and a family, the sooner you have knowledge of where you are and how to build the best strategy for your son, you're going to create the most potential for yourself. Ultimately, everybody's ceiling is different. All right. Probably one of the best players I've been around to date is Andrew Fisher. He's a junior at the University of Tennessee right now in the SEC. He's got a chance to be a high pick in the Major League Draft this July. He's 6'2", 210-ish. He's a genetic freak. Left-handed hitter. Dude hit 20 home runs in the SEC last year. All right. Not everybody has that potential. All right. But at the same time, by understanding where you are, surrounding yourself with the best resources, all right, from a skill standpoint, strength, speed, nutrition being, I think, a hidden piece that so many players overlook, and putting yourself in the strongest position academically, you will maximize your opportunities. And I've never been around a player who buys into that lifestyle and doesn't feel really good about what they've accomplished. ultimately, you got to run your own race too, because what worked for maybe your teammate or a family friend or even an older sibling, right, might not be the right strategy for you. All right. I've got former players of mine, the Finn family. I had all three brothers. Brian's a senior at Kutztown Division II in the PSAC, great Division II conference in Pennsylvania. Sean is a sophomore at UConn, top 20, top 30 program in the country. And Rory is a freshman at University of Delaware in the CAA, great mid-major program. He just hit a big two-run home run in his first game on Friday night, which was awesome. So three brothers, three dramatically different recruiting processes. Right, what worked for one guy necessarily wasn't the right plan for another. All right, same household, same mom and dad. All right, but different plans, different timing, different fits. All right, and how we got there had to be unique for each one of those players. All right, so again, this is where information helps you to build that individualized plan and put you on the best pathway to success. I spoke about this a little bit before, but the recruiting calendar also has to dictate these things, right? If you're, maybe at 2027 right now, and you need more time in the weight room and right to develop because you're a little bit undersized from a physical feature standpoint, understand that maybe it's not a race to August 1st. That you really have, right now where we sit in February of your sophomore year, you have another 14 to 18 months to make that jump. Not everybody's going to be on the same trajectory right away. Again, this is where having a candid, honest assessment can really start to put you on, your right pathway, understanding the calendar, the recruiting calendar and timelines, and how to best map out your future to finding that fit at the college level. Ultimately, the goal for any player, in my opinion, is to find fit. I deem that as a place where you can excel on the field, right? So that's a pathway to playing time, a place where you can continue to develop and reach your ceiling as a player. Academically, believing in a 40-year decision where you're going to earn a degree and have a major that puts you in the right pathway to your career choice. And then as a person, right? So that's coaching staff, culture, are aligned with who you are as a person. Baseball and academics have to be, all right, categories 1A, 1B, however you want to prioritize them as a player and a family. This recruiting process is too difficult, okay, to try and find all these different criteria. When guys come and sit down with me and they say, I want a school that has, between 5,000 and 10,000, enrollment, acceptance rate of 18 to 30% with a, geography in the Mid-Atlantic region. I just laugh at them, honestly, because from the get-go, you don't understand what the goals are, right? If you get a chance to play 4 more years of college baseball and earn a meaningful degree, you've done really well for yourself. And you need to attack the process, particularly early on, with those two criteria as the starting point. If you're fortunate enough to end up with, 2 to 3 offers, you can now start to dive into, well, hey, I like this campus a little bit better, and this geography fits a little bit more what I'm looking for, and the social life and the dorms at this place is a little bit more on par. All right, but if you use those as starting criteria, you're going to dwindle the list really fast, and you're going to make this process even harder. All right. Every player in the recruiting process is going to sacrifice. Just keep that in mind. Again, fortunate to be around some really talented dudes. They didn't get all the offers that they wanted. Sometimes it's not a talent, determination. Sometimes timing is a factor, right? Schools want to move at a quicker pace. The kid and the family aren't ready to do so. Sometimes you just have a poor performance in front of a particular school. They need to get back out to see you again. And, the process is picking up and that secondary evaluation just doesn't occur. All right. So there's a lot of pieces in this thing. Keep the main thing the main thing. Place where you can excel on the field, in the classroom as a person. All right. The financial component that I touched upon, at the beginning, and understanding how scholarships work, all right, is also a factor that you need to build into early strategy. Okay. The cost of college is very expensive. All right. In today's market, there are schools that are $80,000 to $100,000. So, as a family, especially as from a parental perspective, you should have an idea of what your financial threshold is. All right. Keep in mind that there are ways to make school more affordable. You have athletic aid that we talked about. You have merit, and you have financial aid. All right. At the Division I level, you can take a baseball scholarship and academic merit. All right. And couple those things together, stack them. All right. Those stacked packages are typically your most lucrative opportunities in terms of how you're going to make school more affordable. So if affordability is a thing, you want to make sure that your talent level maybe plays to the top of that, conference, and that maybe your academic performance is a little bit above the mean of that admissions class. That typically tends to be a pretty good strategy in terms of the affordability. Similar at the Division III level, where you want to now start to focus your academic bar, where you're playing a little bit above the general students, all right, from a GPA test score perspective. If your threshold, as a family, let's say, is somewhere in the $30,000 to $40,000 range as well, you also want to make sure that you're staying away from targeting schools that are, $80,000 and above. Because even at, 30% athletic scholarship, which is a good offer to a high school player, all right, in today's market, you're still far off from your number. So you got to keep the finances in mind as you start to, build out a target list of schools. Finally, I would say when it comes to the recruiting process, finding your fit, it's where you fit as opposed to where you want to fit. This is a line that a college coach told me one time, and it always stuck with me in terms of how to kind of transcribe that to players. Because, as a regular applicant, you get to pick where you want to go. As long as your, academics are in line with what the institution requires from an admissions standpoint, you have a good chance. There's, again, a lot of moving pieces to this. Sometimes you can be good enough to play at that program. The coach can like you, but they're not recruiting a corner infielder in this class. I would say more oftentimes than not, it's also just a function of understanding where your game is at compared to the levels of play within college baseball. Not everybody can play in the SEC or the ACC. It's not a knock on you, but those are the highest level of our sport. It's okay to play Division II and Division III baseball, but you got to understand where your game is going to give you opportunities to excel in this process. Again, it stems back to having the best player evaluation so that you can build a sound strategy. Once you're ready to begin marketing yourself to schools, it's imperative to be proactive. All right. The days of if you're good enough, they'll find you are long gone. With all the different ways that rosters are put together, right? We talked about the portal. We talked about grad transfers, junior college. There is a lot being thrown at these coaches, right? They get to the end of their season in May, right? Not much recruiting and evaluation happens, excuse me, during the course of their season, right? Which runs parallel to your high school season. So we get to, the beginning of the summer, and typically, early part of June, coaches were out on the road recruiting high school guys. But now a bunch of their players jump in the transfer portal, right? They now have to recruit the portal. They got to make sure there's a roster when they show up on campus for the fall semester. So they're running around trying to make sure that they're procuring enough players for good talent for next year. So, it's definitely affected the early part of June from a high school perspective. There's just not as much evaluation taking place in that period. You then kind of fall into, now only having 4 weeks in the fall period. Again, you go back a decade ago, the fall period never stopped, right? Coaches were on the road during the course of, November, December, January, February, leading up to their seasons. Used to be able to host camps and bring them in as instructors. For many years, I used to hold a camp in North Jersey, right in between Christmas and New Year's. We'd have 30 to 40 Division I schools flying in to cover this thing, right? And 80 to 100 players. It was probably not the best time. Nuns, you would probably kill me nowadays for having guys throw during that time period. I think we've all gotten a lot smarter, but that's what the recruiting calendar allowed. That's gone in today's world, right? There's still institutional camps during that time period, but the recruiting calendar has downsized drastically. So there's less opportunity for coaches to be on the road. They're getting pulled in a lot of different directions, right? As it pertains to, again, how they're filling their roster. And then there's more tournaments and camps and showcases and different events built into these different active evaluation periods. So they get pulled in a ton of different directions. If you're not putting yourself out there through video and email and responsible follow-up, the chances of them finding you are slim to none. Keep in mind as well that, as these coaches go out to events, let's use, Super 17 at Diamond Nation, which takes place in late June. It's one of the best events in the region. I would say anywhere from 80 to 100 plus coaches that attend that event to scout and evaluate. They're not walking into that facility just going to scour fields to see who's a fit, right? They show up with a list of players that they want to see. Hey, at 8 a.m., I have to go and watch this shortstop on field 5. And then at 12:30, I got to roll over to field 3 and watch this right-handed pitcher throw, innings 3 through 6. They have a very oriented schedule in terms of who they're seeing at these events. So if you're not using the lead up to the summer months to proactively market yourself, again, you're falling behind. You need a strategy in terms of how to do that. It starts with video. So this is generally a time of the year, again, for guys who are ready to begin the recruiting process, either 2026s or, advanced 2027s. You should be taking some bullpen video. You should be taking some batting practice swings, all right, and having that at your disposal. You don't need a fancy recruiting video. I've done hundreds and hundreds of these things with no more than an iPhone. All right, this is your best tool to make a recruiting video. All right, you can buy a $10 tripod on Amazon, so it looks a little bit better, a little bit more of a still shot. From a pitching perspective, run through, your pitch profile from behind the pitching mound, basically from the waistline up all the way through the hitting zone. All right, so fastball, breaking ball, changeup, maybe a couple more fastballs, a few fastballs from the open side, and maybe 1 or 2 fastballs from the front perspective, either from like halfway between the mound and the plate, so we can see some front side mechanics. All right, no more than 12, 15 pitches. On the hitting side, again, open side is most important. I would tell you 5 to 8 good swings should do it. If you have a chance, if you're an infielder and can do some ground ball pickups in a somewhat, good size space, that's good too, but not required. On the hitting side, again, if you can get some swings from the backside, all right, and show ball flight, that's okay, but not mandatory. If you train at RPP and have access to data, some TrackMan stuff or hit tracks, offensive or pitching defense or pitching hitting, excuse me, and that is valuable to you, right? It shows you in a good light in terms of how you present yourself. You could use that as another way of marketing yourself. We're obviously about a month out from high school games starting here in the Northeast. As you get into the high school season, again, it's another really good opportunity to start to collect some game tape. Pitchers, everything from behind home plate, ideally right behind the umpire, offset to the opposite batter's box of the hitter. Nice tight shot. And then from a hitting perspective, everything from the open side. All right. with game tape, it's really important that the shots and the angles are clean. All right. I don't want to be, accuse anybody here, but mom and dad 30 rows up on the bleachers, with a little speck on the mound or at the plate really doesn't do us any good in terms of that being a valuable piece in terms of coaches evaluating your skill set. Once you've collected this, video, all right, now you can start to, think about a communication strategy with email. All right, and I would tell you email is the best form to reach out to coaches. If they follow you on, Twitter, maybe a DM, but don't do both. All right, don't be a nuisance. Choose one forum and use that as the way that you're going to communicate. And it might be some coaches you're going to DM because they follow you, and then the others you're going to email. But certainly, I think email is always a great option. And just reach out with a concise message of who you are, and make sure that video is right there in the middle of that email. All right. We buy with our eyes in the recruiting process. I've never had a coach reach out to me and say, "Hey, man, like your kid wrote an unbelievable email." All right. Like it doesn't happen. All right. Most of these guys, they open the email and they go right to the video before they start reading. So make sure it's clean. I'm a big fan of YouTube. All right. It's free. You can throw it right up there. It's easy to process the video. And that way, it's there for the coaches. Stay away from like Dropbox or downloading files. Coaches sometimes aren't the most technological, savvy people, especially at this time of the year. They're doing a lot of this on a bus or a plane. So just having an easy click link, I think is always preferred. All right. And then you got to follow up, just sending one email, here in, let's call it March, and expecting that to carry you to June doesn't make a lot of sense. So, I would tell you, think about, getting your recruiting video out, and then some point in the high school season, some game tape, and then maybe like one more time before the summer, following up with your summer schedule. In terms of, now that you've marketed yourself, you have to think about exposure, right? And who you are as a player, the type of schools that you're targeting, and then ensuring that your playing schedule is going to get you in front of those schools. All right. If you're a, 2026 Northeast Division III guy, and you're going to go spend 3 weeks playing in Georgia and Florida this summer, in my opinion, that's a misallocation of your schedule because you're taking yourself out of the region that you're going to get recruited in. So you got to think with this critical lens in terms of, again, where does my game fit, right? Where's the feedback, the evaluation, and then putting myself in front of those schools as many times as possible in order to garner interest and move the process along in a positive direction. As you're going through this, right, and you're sending out the emails, maybe you're not getting any replies, right? Especially if your video is being viewed a lot on YouTube and you're not getting replies, it means there's probably not a lot of interest, most likely. Be reactive and adapt your strategy. Maybe you got to target smaller programs, different level of play. Understand that while yes, you want to obviously start from day one on the best pathway, sometimes the process changes, and you have to be able to call an audible and continue to pursue the right fit at all times. Talked about a lot of this already in terms of, the recruiting videos and the different angles that, you need to capture. The one thing I would say, just in terms of, again, the skills video, keep them simple, guys. It's about the player, not the video. You have 5 to 10 seconds to capture these guys' attention. So you walking up to the screen, with a fancy intro, with the mic, like, guys don't want to see that. They want to see your swing right away. They want to see that first fastball out of your hand. Capture their attention right away. All right. Again, in terms of length and format, be concise. I would say a recruiting video should be no more than 90 seconds, preferably closer to 50 to 60 seconds. Social media can be a powerful tool, like many aspects of our life, our modern day life. I would say most coaches are on Twitter. Not saying they all use Twitter to recruit, but some do. Again, if you're relying on your tweet to get recruited, I would tell you that that's wishful thinking. You got to find better ways to be proactive that I just talked about. But guys will sometimes, type your name into Twitter and see what happens, or do a Google search, right? A lot of coaches, once they see a guy that they like, they're gonna pop that name into Google and see what might pop up in terms of high school stats, PBR, perfect game profile, different things like that, depending on how much of a deep dive they want to do on you. And Twitter might pop up as well. So I would tell you in your bio section to have your information nicely laid out, your grad year, your position, your high school, your summer ball program. All right, maybe your GPA and test score, especially if you're an academic kid. All right, and keep it to that. All right, so that they're able to, have all that information presented to them right away, no matter what form, whether they're just on a deep dive of Twitter information or getting to you through your email or a Google search. I would pin on your Twitter profile. You're able to pin a tweet, um, whether it's your skills video or some recent game tape. I would pin that at the top. Somebody who uses Twitter sometimes to just go check a kid out. There's nothing worse than pulling up a kid's Twitter profile and the last like 10 videos are his buddies that he's retweeted. All right, so have your video pinned right at the top so a coach is able to see it right away. And then obviously just be cognizant of what you're retweeting on that forum. All right, even if you didn't tweet it, it's just a retweet, it's going to be associated with you. So what your friends are saying, what an inside joke might be, college coaches are not going to understand, and they're looking to make a first impression on you. So you got to be aware of what you're putting out there, across social media, just not Twitter, Instagram, um, TikTok, even. I know of several recruiting coordinators that have, ghost accounts on those forums to just go and see how guys that they're actively recruiting behave in those spaces. So they want to do their due diligence, right? If they're going to invest one of those 34 roster spots, athletic aid in you, they want to make sure they're getting the right guy to bring into that clubhouse. In terms of what we bring here at RPP Recruiting, is the experience, the knowledge. Obviously, laid a lot out of that, here on our presentation tonight. Complete understanding of what the landscape is and how it's shifting and how that impacts players. An evaluation-based strategy. Again, here at RPP, I feel like we have, the most powerful resources to really do a deep dive under the hood at every player to best help them create a winning strategy. Ground force, I mean, you know, this is a little bit of a bold statement, but I think, players that I've worked with, college coaches would echo this. There's nobody who attends more high school and summer ball games than myself. Saw in excess of 140 last year. This is not a job you can do behind a computer screen. I think it's important to get out there and watch your guys in the game setting. Make sure the things that we're working on the player development side are translating into the game. Have a really good understanding of that player's skill set in that setting, because that's the ultimate proving ground. And then being there, within the crux of the recruiting process when things are maturing and obviously at a critical point. Relationships with college coaches. Fortunate, to have built some really strong rapport with guys across, the gauntlet of college baseball. Again, I think it comes from being a really good evaluator, taking time to learn about players, and then being real with them. And being in the trenches with those guys throughout the course of the evaluation period. Bahram touched upon it. It was nice to see a lot of guys be excited about, myself coming on board with RPP. I think, as I've told our guys over many years, been in a fortunate position that whenever we've picked up the phone and asked a coach to come and evaluate our guys, they've always made time to do so. Doesn't mean they're going to offer them, but they're going to take the time to evaluate our players because they trust the source, and that means a lot. And I think best positions our players at all times. And then this is a full-time job, just like everything at RPP. We're fully committed to players, and the recruiting process. Not a pitching coach, not a hitting coach, not a strength coach. This is my sole capacity, and work really hard on a daily basis to make that commitment to our players and ensure that we have everything in place to best help them at all points in the recruiting process. In terms of our different offerings, I have a link to our website on the next page that you guys could check out, but we have a few different things that we're excited to present Obviously, the evaluation. We then have our consulting service, which is really about helping assess players and then strategize in terms of how you should, proceed with the recruiting process. And then our advisory service, which is a all hands-on component in terms of working with the player and the family throughout the extent of the recruiting process. So there's some really good verbiage, some different things on our website that can give you some more detail. For me, I think the consulting service is a tremendous place to start. Again, you're going to get the evaluation, so we're going to be able to give you some really honest feedback in terms of where your game is at, if you're ready to start the recruiting process, where we think your game fits, be able to talk about different conferences and level of play that we think is appropriate, help you develop, that recruiting strategy, talk about, how we think you should now proceed in terms of communicating with schools and putting your things out there as a lead into, the summer and the active recruiting period that'll begin in March, but really start to hit pace by the time we get to June. So I think that's a great starting point. We're excited about a lot of this, of what we have to offer, and think it's a tremendous and really powerful platform for players. In terms of how to get in touch, that's my email address. Also, our social media on both Instagram and Twitter is at RPP Recruiting. We're just getting those starting, but there'll be some really good information up on those forums, in the months to come. And then the QR code in the middle of the screen right now will take you to the recruiting page on the RPP website. Again, has more detail in terms of all of our different offerings and what we're providing to players. And I'll leave that up for a little bit if you guys want to click into it. But certainly, like I said, I want to leave some time here before we get too late in the evening, to make sure I leave some time for some questions.
Opening up to questions. It's always Sam, I always say it's a great presentation when there's not a lot of questions. That's really good. I have one thing I do want to add. Last week on my podcast, I had a coach from Florida State, and he said that a lot of the down south, a lot of the big schools down south, he said the reason there's a lot of kids from down south, he feels, this is his opinion, that all of the kids down south in high school have dedicated strength coaches in their high schools. These kids are getting physical and they're big, and they already come in with a really strong and athletic bodies and move well. By the time they come in as freshmen in college, we do not, for the most part in the Northeast, have dedicated strength coaches in high school. And he brought up a really great point that I wasn't even thinking about. He was like, the guys that are training with you that are up there, they have dedicated strength coaches. It's really, really for those of you, like I assume everybody here belongs to RPP. You're in a good spot as far as prepping your kids to get ready for the next level, because he felt like that was one of the reasons that you see so many guys from the South and from the West. They're and Texas and Florida. They have a lot of strength and conditioning in their high schools that we kind of do. The coaches like to think they do, but they do as best they can. But they're not dedicated strength coaches, and I just thought that was an interesting point. Anybody?
I'll just echo that, Nuns, in terms of, I would say with younger players, one of the most common pieces of feedback from a college coach is, hey, we like what we see, but he needs to get more physical. And the sooner you do that, the better you're going to prepare yourself for the recruiting process. The guys who are able to spend 2-3 years inside of a strength program are going to be, much further along than the guy who's trying to play catch up in his junior year of high school.
Sammy, there's a question on the chat side. What is the cost of the 3 services? Which what I think a lot of people always want to ask. You want to talk about this? You don't have to talk about whatever you don't want to, but what are the costs?
Sure. Yeah, we can definitely go over that. So our initial valuation is $150. Our consulting service is $750. And our advisory service is a one-time fee of $6,000 over the course of that engagement from start to finish. And there's some different payment plans and options with the advisory service that I would cover if anybody reaches out.
Any questions? Guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks, Sam, so much. We're really excited about this. Bahram and I have been talking about doing it, and we feel like the iron is ready to, the hot is hot to strike. So, Bahram, you want to say anything?
No, that's it. Great job, Sam.
Thanks,
Awesome.
everyone. Appreciate it.
Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard.
We like I said, we recorded this. I'm sure Bahram will send this in an email, or if you want to hear it or get it to someone, you can certainly get in touch with us at the front desk and let them know. But I'm sure Bahram will be doing something.
Yeah, we'll get it out tomorrow.
We'll get it out tomorrow. So, guys, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of the night, and we'll see you at the gym.
Thanks.
Speak soon. Okay. Bye-bye.